Before I start, make sure you subscribe to my channel. My name is Calvin Brooks. And 3 weeks ago, my wife Rachel kicked me out of our home because she chose to believe the lies her 17-year-old son told her. I still remember standing on the porch that night, rain pouring down, my suitcase soaking through, while she stood frozen in the doorway, her whole body shaking with self-righteous anger. "You cross a line this time," she said, her voice trembling. "You hurt him, Calvin. You actually hurt him." Eli stood slightly behind her, wide-eyed, lip trembling, performing the perfect act of frightened innocence. A faint bruise sat on his left arm. Nothing clearly defined, just dramatic enough to make me look like the villain. I tried to explain myself. I begged her to at least hear me out. She didn't. She slammed the door shut before I could say anything else, and the sound of that door was the sound of my marriage ending. 3 weeks passed. Then Rachel texted me. "Have you taken time to think? Eli says he's open to forgiving you if you apologize and promise to change. We can talk about you coming back if you've truly reflected." I stared at that message for a long time. No apology for how she treated me. No acknowledgement of what I'd been put through. Just another demand. Apologize to the boy who had destroyed everything. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about saving my marriage anymore. It was about exposing the truth. Because that night before she threw me out, I caught something. A tiny moment. Half a second. Something that never left my mind. Eli's eyes. That brief flicker of curiosity before he switched into terrified victim mode. Too perfect. Too intentional. The bruise appeared right after our argument about the car. Right after I refused to buy him a brand new one because I had just paid his tuition and insurance. That wasn't coincidence. That was perfectly crafted timing. And those quiet conversations he and Rachel would whisper about, conversations that always stopped the second I entered a room. I used to think it was just teenage attitude. Now, I wasn't so certain. I needed help, not emotional comfort. I needed someone professional. The first person I reached out to was a family law attorney named Patricia Chan, recommended by a friend who'd survived an ugly divorce himself. Patricia was calm, incredibly sharp, and impossible to read. She listened to my story from start to finish without interrupting once, just writing down notes in her neat handwriting. When I finished, she shut her notebook and stared directly at me. "Do you own a house?" she asked. "Yes," I answered. "I bought it 5 years before we got married. My name is the only name on the deed." She nodded slowly. "Good. That gives you leverage. But if you're serious about divorce, we need to move quickly." She already made the first move when she kicked you out. I paused. I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. A part of me still wished she'd wake up and realize what really happened. Patricia gave me the sad, knowing smile. "In my experience, when someone chooses to believe the absolute worst version of you without proof, they've already made their decision." That sentence stuck with me long after I left her office. Patricia then referred me to a private investigator, Dean Walters, a quiet, very detail-oriented man in his 40s who specialized specifically in domestic deception cases. At first, I felt ridiculous explaining my teenage stepson might be plotting this. Dean didn't laugh. He just nodded. "Teenagers can be incredibly manipulative when they want something," he said. "Let me start with finances. When manipulation runs as deep, there's almost always a money trail." He was right. Within 1 week, Dean came back with the first massive shock. Our joint household account had been draining for months. Little withdrawals, $50 here, $100 there, sometimes several times a week. Nearly $8,000 gone. Gaming consoles, rare sneakers, constant food deliveries, all traced directly to Eli's devices and accounts. And here's what hit hardest. Several purchases required parental approval, meaning Rachel had signed off, and every time the account overdraft, she covered it with savings transfers. Dean kept digging. He uncovered a brand new credit card Rachel opened 2 months earlier, nearly maxed out already. For $1,000, almost all for Eli. The same woman who constantly lectured me about budgeting had been funding her son's lifestyle behind my back. That was when it all clicked. This wasn't solely Eli manipulating her. Rachel had chosen a side and lied to me for months. Dean wasn't finished. If we want the full truth, we need to check digital traces, he said. Messages, deleted chats, socials, everything leaves evidence. It felt invasive, but I approved it. What he ended up finding made me feel physically sick. Months and months of messages between Eli and his friends. Conversation strategies, jokes about how easy it was to fool his mom. Mom always takes my side if I cry. It's so easy. She hates conflict. Another message said, "Got the bruise ready. Showing her tonight. This should end him." He literally injured himself intentionally to frame me as abusive. Dean even dug up a video hidden deep in Eli's cloud storage. Shaky footage of him in his bathroom, smashing his own arm against the counter over and over until a bruise bloomed dark. "This better work," he muttered in the clip. I couldn't breathe when I watched it. I just stared at the screen while the full horror settled in. This wasn't just teenage attitude. This was straight calculated cruelty. The final piece came from another chat between Eli and his best friend. Once she leaves him, we'll sell the house, move to the city. She'll have more money for me, and we'll finally get out of this dead-end place. That was the moment I realized something crystal clear. I wasn't a person to him. I was just an obstacle blocking his dream lifestyle. The next day, when Rachel texted, asking if I'd reflected, I finally replied, "Come over tomorrow, 3 p.m. She instantly responded, "Does this mean you're ready to fix things?" I didn't answer her. Instead, I stayed up the entire night, printing every bank record, every message, every screenshot, every photo and video Dean collected. I placed all of it inside a thick manila folder. At exactly 3 o'clock, Rachel arrived at the cafe I chose. She looked thinner, drained. The confidence she had when she threw me out was completely gone. For a brief moment, I felt sorry for her, but it disappeared the second I remembered how quickly she abandoned me. She gave a weak smile. "I'm glad you're finally willing to talk, Eli." I raised my hand and slid the folder across the table. Her sentence cut off mid-word. "Open it," I said softly. She hesitated, confused, then unlatched the folder. The first page was the divorce paperwork already signed by my lawyer. Her eyes widened. Then she began flipping through everything. Screenshots, statements, printed messages. Last was the USB with the video. She stared at the still frame image. Eli's arm mid-swing, the countertop clear in the shot. "My name is Calvin Brooks, and 3 weeks ago, my wife Rachel threw me out of our home after taking her 17-year-old son's lies as truth. I remember standing on the front porch that night, rain hammering down, my suitcase drenched, while she remained in the doorway, shaking with righteous fury. 'You've gone too far this time,' she said, voice quivering. 'You hurt him, Calvin. You actually hurt him.' Eli, her son, stood just behind her, eyes wide, lip trembling, the very picture of terrified innocence. A faint bruise blossomed on his left arm, its shape conveniently ambiguous, but dramatic enough to paint me as the villain. I tried to explain. I begged her to listen. She didn't. The door slammed before I could utter another word, the hollow thud echoing like the final note of my marriage. 3 weeks later, Rachel texted me, "Have you had time to reflect? Eli says he's willing to forgive you if you apologize and promise to change. We can discuss you coming back if you've truly thought about your behavior." I stared at the screen. No acknowledgement of my pain. No recognition of the injustice I'd endured. Just another command. Apologize to the boy who had ruined my life. That was the moment I decided this wasn't about salvaging my marriage. It was about uncovering the truth. Because the night before she kicked me out, I'd seen something, a fleeting half-second moment that refused to leave my mind. Eli's eyes, curiosity, just before terror overtook him. Too practiced, too smooth. That bruise on his arm had appeared right after our car argument, after I refused a brand new vehicle because I had just paid his tuition and insurance. Perfectly timed. And those whispered conversations between him and Rachel that always stopped when I entered a room. I dismissed them as teenage sulking. Now, I wasn't so sure. I needed help, not emotional, but professional. I called a family law attorney, Patricia Chan, recommended by a friend who had survived a bitter divorce. Patricia was calm, sharp, unreadable. She listened to every word without interruption, jotting notes in perfect, precise handwriting. When I finished, she closed her notebook and looked at me directly. "Do you own a house?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I bought it 5 years before the marriage. My name is the only one on the deed." She nodded slowly. "Good. That gives you leverage. But if you're serious about divorce, we need to act fast. She's already forced you out." I hesitated. A part of me still hoped she might see reason. Patricia's sad smile lingered. "In my experience," she said, "when someone chooses to believe the worst about you without proof, they've already made their choice." That line stayed with me long after I left her office. She recommended a private investigator, Dean Walters, a quiet, methodical man in his 40s, specializing in domestic fraud and manipulation. I felt ridiculous at first, telling him about my stepson's supposed scheme. Dean didn't laugh. He just nodded. "Teenagers can be ruthless manipulators when they want something," he said. "Let's start with finances. There's usually a trail when manipulation runs this deep." He was right. Within a week, Dean returned with the first bombshell. Our joint household account had been draining for months. Small withdrawals. $1.50 here, $100 there, sometimes multiple times a week. Almost $8,000 vanished. Gaming consoles, limited edition sneakers, food deliveries twice a day, all expenses traced to Eli's accounts and devices. What chilled me most, several purchases required parental authorization, meaning Rachel had approved them. When the account overdraft, she covered it with transfers from our savings. And then Dean found more. A credit card in her name opened 2 months prior, nearly maxed out, almost entirely for Eli. The woman who once lectured me about budgeting had secretly funded her son's desires behind my back. That was when it hit me. This wasn't just teenage manipulation. Rachel had picked a side and lied to me for months. Dean wasn't done. If we want the full truth, we need to check the digital side, messages, social media, deleted chats. Everything leaves a footprint. It felt invasive, but I gave the go-ahead. What he uncovered made me physically sick. Months of messages between Eli and friends. Plans, schemes, jokes about how easily his mother believed him. Mom always takes my side when I cry. It's so easy. She hates conflict. Almost there. Another red. Got the bruise ready, showing her tonight. This should finish him off. He literally injured himself to make me look abusive. Dean even found a video buried in Eli's cloud storage. A shaky recording of him in the bathroom, slamming his own arm against the counter until a dark bruise formed. "This better work," he muttered. I couldn't breathe. I stared at the screen as the truth settled in. This wasn't teenage rebellion. It was calculated cruelty. The final piece, a chat with his best friend. Once she leaves him, we'll sell the house, move to the city. She'll have more money for me, and we can finally escape this dead-end town. I realized then I wasn't a parent in his eyes. I was just an obstacle. The next day, when Rachel texted again, asking if I had reflected, I finally replied, "Come over tomorrow, 3 p.m. She responded instantly, "Does this mean you're ready to make things right?" I didn't answer. Instead, I spent the night printing every bank statement, message, screenshot, photo, and video Dean had collected, placing them neatly in a thick manila folder. At precisely 3, Rachel arrived at the cafe I chose. She looked thinner, exhausted, her confident posture gone. For a brief moment, I felt pity, but it vanished remembering how easily she discarded me. She smiled weakly. "I'm glad you're willing to talk, Eli." I raised my hand, sliding the folder across the table. Her words died mid-sentence. "Open it," I said quietly. She frowned, confused, then slowly unlatched the folder. The first page, divorce paperwork already signed by my lawyer. Her eyes widened. Then she flipped through everything, screenshots, bank statements, printed messages. Last was a USB with the video. She froze at the still frame, Eli's arm mid-swing, the counter sharp and clear. Her hand flew to her mouth, her face draining of color. "He did this," she whispered. I nodded, planned it, every detail. You helped without realizing it. She looked shattered. Calvin, I didn't know. I swear I didn't. You don't want to know. I cut in. You believe the worst about me without proof. That's worse than not knowing. She cried softly. I offered no comfort. That part of me was gone. By the time we left the cafe, Rachel knew it was over. She tried reaching out later, but my lawyer handled everything. The divorce went smoothly. I kept the house. Eli's plan backfired. The video and messages were entered into court records, and Rachel was required to enroll him in counseling. Dean later told me Eli dropped out of school temporarily, and Rachel sold her car to cover debts. I didn't feel triumph, just quiet finality. Sometimes at night, I think of that first bruise. One false mark, one staged injury, unraveling a family built on fragile trust. But in the end, I walked away with something far more valuable than a marriage, peace. Nearly 4 months later, I'd signed the final papers, moved back home, and begun rebuilding my sanctuary. I thought the worst was behind me. But Rachel never lets go of control easily. At first, her messages were practical. Questions about utilities, mail, paperwork. Slowly, they shifted. While cleaning Eli's old room, I found a photo from the lake house. She sent a text. You looked so happy that day. I still can't sleep, Calvin. I keep hearing your voice. I wish I had listened. Each message carried guilt or nostalgia, but I knew better. Guilt isn't accountability. When I ignored her, she escalated, called mutual friends, claimed I could fix things if I just talked to her. Then one afternoon, she appeared at my door unannounced, holding a small box. The confident woman I married had become brittle and uncertain. I thought, maybe we could talk, she said softly. Just talk. I hesitated, then stepped aside, not for reconciliation, but for closure. Inside the box, old photos, our wedding day, a honeymoon postcard, a watch I'd lost months ago, taken by Eli after I left. She explained. I confronted him. The messages, the video, he admitted everything. Broke down crying. Said he didn't mean for it to go that far. He just wanted me to himself. He's in therapy now. I nodded. That's good. She reached for my hand. I gently pulled it back. Rachel, I said evenly, I forgave you long ago. Forgiveness doesn't mean return. Her eyes flashed with frustration. So that's it? After everything? After all the years I stood by you? I almost laughed. You stood by me until it was inconvenient to question your son. She tried again, quieter. You're not the only one who was manipulated. He played both of us. You could try to understand that. I do, I said, but I've learned from it. You're still trying to rewrite it. Her composure cracked. You think you're perfect? Righteous? You think I haven't suffered enough. I stood, signaling the end of the conversation. I think you made your choice when you slammed that door in my face. Tears streaked her cheeks. She whispered, You'll regret this. Now I don't, I said quietly. She left the box on the table and walked away. Weeks passed. Dean later told me Rachel had sold her car, taken a job 2 towns over, and Eli had withdrawn from school temporarily, attending therapy twice a week. I poured myself into work, ran again, joined a photography group. Landscapes, the rhythm of the sea. They reminded me peace isn't found in those who twist forgiveness into leverage. One evening, an unknown number messaged, I saw your photos online. They're beautiful. You look happy. It was Rachel. I didn't reply. Blocked the number. Silence wasn't emptiness. It was freedom. A year later, I moved to the coast, bought a small home overlooking the water. Every morning, coffee in hand, I watched the sunrise. I thought of Rachel and Eli, not with anger, but detached clarity. Their lives have been built on manipulation and denial. The truth burned it all down, but I rebuilt from the ashes. Some endings aren't tragedies. They're releases. The quiet kind that finally lets you breathe after holding it in for too long. And as I watched the sunrise, camera in hand, I smiled. They hadn't broken me. They had freed me.